This is MTG Burgeoning, and in this video we are going to update and upgrade the 98 of this Eligeth Crossroads Augur and Sakashima of 1000 Faces partner EDH deck. Thank you for joining us for this installment of the Up and Up series. Here we have our Mono Blue partner team of Eligeth and Sakashima as we continue to streamline this Mono Blue build to be more of a spell slinger type and less of a Sphinx tribal build. If you missed the last installment of this series with Eligeth and Sakashima, then you missed that we took out a very large portion of the Sphinx tribal theme and replaced it with counter magic. If we're going mono blue, we might as well go with mono blue and what mono blue does best. So in this episode, we are going to further advance our spell slinging desires by including some spell slinging payoffs. So here we're going to include some cards that are going to go in as ways in which to synergize with our intended theme. And the first card going in is Wind Rider Wizard. We have a 2/2 flying human wizard for 2 and a blue mana. And whenever we cast an instant, sorcery, or wizard spell, this is most likely going to be triggered by instants and sorceries, then we may draw a card, and if we do, we discard a card. So we have a looting effect tied to every single one of our instants and sorceries, which, when Eligeth is on our side of the battlefield, is only going to help get more cards into our hand, particularly when those instant and sorcery spells are already scrying cards into our hand, thanks to that guy's static ability. The next spell-slinging payoff card going in is Archmage Emeritus, a 2/2 human wizard. There's another wizard. 2 and 2 blue mana. It has the Magecraft ability, so whenever we cast or copy an instant or sorcery spell, we will draw a card. There's not much spell copying going on in this build, at least up to this point, but there will be an awful lot of instant and sorcery spell casting. And note that Archmage Emeritus does not make us discard a card. It's straight card draw and not a looting effect. All right, for some additional abilities that we get for the purposes of casting our instant and sorcery spells, we turn to Murmuring Mystic. We have a 1/5 human wizard. There's another one of those wizards. It's 3 and a blue mana, and whenever we cast an instant or sorcery spell, we create a 1/1 blue bird illusion creature token with flying. Those 1/1 birds are going to pile up on our side of the battlefield and will act as great chump blockers if our opponents decide to attack us, or for the purposes of us swarming one of our opponents and bringing their life total down to 0 or less. If we're going to talk about casting spells and creating tokens that fly, then no deck should be without Talrand, Sky Summoner. 2 and 2 blue mana for a Merfolk wizard. There's that wizard again. And whenever we cast an instant or sorcery spell, we create a 2/2 blue drake creature token with flying. I know Talrand is the target of such vitriol in sections of the Magic community. I don't understand the reason for that. Yes, he's reprinted in every single commander deck that has blue mana in it. He's reprinted in most of the reprint sets that we have, like master sets and remastered sets. And with all of those reprintings, it's still a card that's like 50 or 75 cents on the bulk market. He's good at what he does. He can't help the fact that he's just that popular. Talrand, you've got a spot in the 98 of this deck, and we will never, ever rip you to shreds. All right, we're going to shift away from creatures that are going to provide us spell-slinging payoffs to a couple of enchantments. The first being Metallurgic Summonings. 3 and 2 blue mana. Whenever we cast an instant or sorcery spell, we create an XX colorless construct artifact creature token, where X is that spell's mana value. So our goal and purpose here is most likely to flood our side of the battlefield with these small power and toughness construct artifact creature tokens, because most of our instant and sorcery spells, not all of course, but most of them are going to be of a lower CMC rating. But that's okay, we still have the ability to swarm our opponents in combat, and that might be something they would never expect when they sit down at the EDH table for a mono blue deck with Sakashima and Eligeth as our partnered commanders. As an additional bonus here for Metallurgic Summonings, we can pay 3 and 2 blue mana again, and we can exile this card to return all instant and sorcery cards from our graveyard to our hand, but this is an ability we can only activate if we control 6 or more artifacts. By the time this deck is done appearing on the Up and Up series over the course of the next few weeks, that's not going to be a problem at all. We're going to have some artifacts in this build because there are certain cards that we want to make sure that we can activate the Metalcraft ability. More on that to come in the future. But Metallurgic Summonings is definitely going to help us flood our side of the battlefield with tokens that are created through our spell-slinging menagerie. Yeah, spell-slinging menagerie. Try pulling that out of thin air. All right, so similar to Metallurgic Summonings, but probably much more powerful, we have Shark Typhoon. Enchantment for 5 and a blue mana whenever we cast a non-creature spell. So this is going to trigger whenever we cast any non-creature spell and not just an instant or sorcery. We create an XX blue shark creature token with flying, where X is that spell's converted mana cost. Baby, we want to get this card onto our side of the battlefield as quickly as possible. But if we should happen to draw it during the mid to late game, we can also cycle it away for X, 1 generic, and a blue mana. And when we do, we discard this card, we draw a card, and then we create one of those sharks. It's XX, depending on whatever it is we paid. Shark Typhoon, as you know probably out there already, MTGBC, Shark Typhoon can completely take over a game, particularly when sculpted around strategically like the 99 of this mono blue build is. So for those 6 spell-slinging payoffs to go into the deck, we need to take out 6 cards that are no longer relevant to the theme of this build. And the first is Jace Mirror Mage. All right, Jace, you had a spot in here when we were being cutesy with our scry abilities, but the time is now for you to come out and yield to more powerful cards. Each one of those 6 cards is going to do something in this deck better than what Jace could do. The +1 Scry 2 once a turn ability is just not going to get it done, considering with what those cards could do in replacing you. So Jace, you're out. And that's all there is to say about that. Now, the next 2 are both Sphinxes that are coming out. It was my hope to keep these Sphinxes in the 98 of this build because of the combo that they can form, particularly when it comes to the peripheral benefits we have from drawing so many cards. But I think we have to get away from the potential of having a 2-piece combo with a combined total of 9 mana and really optimize and focus on the spell-slinging theme of this build. So with that in mind, Prognostic Sphinx and Curator of Mysteries, they're both coming out. So here we have a Prognostic Sphinx, which we could discard a card to give it hexproof until end of turn, and then we tap it. And Curator of Mysteries, whenever we cycle or discard a card, we cycle 1. So if we have Eligeth on our side of the battlefield, or a copy of Eligeth through Sakashima, we technically could draw our entire deck by discarding a card with Prognostic Sphinx, triggering Curator of Mysteries, and drawing a card off of that. But for 9 mana and 2 creatures, it's going to clunk up what we're trying to accomplish in the streamlining of this spell-slinging build. So those 2 cards are going to come out. All right, the next 3 cards to be replaced over here are all cards that are just on the lower tier of power level when considering what we already have in this deck and what is going in. So with that in mind, Opt is going to be coming out. This was it's 1 mana spell, scry 1, draw a card. With Eligeth, we draw 2 cards for 1 mana. But with all of the other cards that we have in this deck and what we're going to accomplish by the time we're finished updating and upgrading this deck over the series of the Up and Up installments, 2 cards for 1 mana is just not good enough. And that's why Chain to Memory is coming out as well. Target creature gets -4/-0 till end of turn, and we scry 2. With Eligeth, we would draw 2 cards, but it's just not good enough anymore. And lastly, for this part, it is Ether Spouts. That's going to come out. For each attacking creature, its owner puts it on the top or bottom of their library. So we're going to be a little more proactive with our battlefield management, particularly because of the number of counterspells we put into the last episode's installment. And with that in mind, we can take out the more reactive Ether Spouts and its 5 mana commitment. All right, for this video, we got 3 more cards going in that are going to help us to synergize and strengthen the overall balance of this deck. For a card drawing purpose, we're going to put Mystic Remora in this build. It's an enchantment for 1 blue mana with a cumulative upkeep of 1 generic mana, which means at the beginning of our upkeep, we put an age counter on this permanent, and then we sacrifice it unless we pay its upkeep cost for each age counter on it. And whenever an opponent casts a non-creature spell, we may draw a card unless that player pays 4 mana. A turn 1 Mystic Remora or an early turn casting of this enchantment could lead to enormous benefits on our side of the battlefield. Mystic Remora is going in, and it's going to replace Wandering Archaic. Here we were able to kind of have one tax card replacing another. We're going to get more benefits from Mystic Remora than we will from Wandering Archaic, which only let us copy instant and sorcery spells that our opponents cast if they don't pay 2 mana, whereas here we're going to draw a card if they don't pay 4 for a non-creature spell that they cost. This will give us more value than that. Next up is going to be Noble Benefactor. Pretty much when this creature dies, each player is going to search their library for 1 card and put it into their hand. This is going to help our opponents, yes, but it's going to help us more, because when we get to the point where we're able to get Noble Benefactor onto the battlefield and then into the graveyard, the card that we get will destroy the battlefield and will make our opponents cry. The number 1 target, of course, most likely is going to be Omniscience, and if we have a fistful of counterspells, good luck trying to interact with us afterwards. With Noble Benefactor going in, that puts any card into our hand. It's going to replace Fabricate, which lets us put any artifact from our library into our hand. It is a sorcery, allows us to do it whenever we want during our turn, but Noble Benefactor is going to give us a wider range of options than Fabricate. And lastly, very quickly, Lightning Greaves going in as a way in which to protect our commanders, particularly Eligeth. It's going to give Eligeth Shroud and Haste. That goes in, and we're going to take out Scour from existence. It's a pretty solid removal spell, but 7 colorless mana is just not going to hack it when we're going to be controlling the battlefield and what our opponents cast with greater frequency. All right, there you have it, MTG BC. Some more updates and upgrades to our Eligeth and Sakashima deck. Let me know your thoughts about these changes in the comment section below. This is MTG Burgeoning, your channel for all things magic.